Sharks, as apex predators, are vital to maintaining the balance of marine ecosystems. Despite their fearsome reputation, shark attacks are rare, often stemming from curiosity or mistaken identity. With sleek bodies and razor-sharp senses, these majestic creatures are perfectly adapted to ocean life. Sadly, overfishing and habitat loss threaten many species, pushing them toward decline. Understanding shark behavior and respecting their habitat is crucial to reducing human-shark encounters and ensuring their conservation. Here are 6 compelling stories. One fine morning in 1996, the sun was shining off the coast of South Africa. As usual, False Bay was bustling with activity, drawing in locals and visitors. Although attacks were uncommon, great white shark sightings had long been common in the bay, renowned for its breathtaking views of Table Mountain and abundant marine life. These apex predators had an ideal feeding ground in the surrounding waters, teeming with fish and seals. But even with the sporadic shark sightings, beachgoers were frequently drawn in for leisurely swims by False Bay's warm waters. Earlier that morning, some friends had got together for a swim. One of them was a woman named Marlene Marty van der Berg. Marty was a lively 300-pound woman who was frequently the life of the party wherever she went. Never letting her size prevent her from enjoying life, she had always been at ease in her skin. She didn't realize danger was below the surface when she was laughing and floating in the bay with her friends today. Despite its natural beauty, False Bay had a darker side. Predators were often drawn to swimmers because the bay's waters were infamously murky in some places. A large great white shark measuring about 16 feet in length had been cruising the bay's deeper waters that morning. The shark had gradually started to get closer to the group, drawn in by the swimmers' flurry of movement. The distance between Marty and her friends and the shore was still about 50 yards, or so they thought. Amidst the sounds of distant seagulls and the sporadic boat engine, laughter and splashing could be heard along the beach. With her arms outstretched and relishing the warmth of the South African sun, Marty floated carefree. Her friends Olivia Clive and Sarah were nearby, chit-chatting and occasionally going under the surface. The thought of being watched was unknown to any of them. Sensing the waves' vibrations, the great white locked onto Marty's bigger frame. Since sharks are opportunistic hunters by nature, their instincts as predators kicked in. It was probably thought that the disturbance was coming from an injured animal or a seal, frequently seen in these waters. With its dorsal fin slicing through the water, the shark started to circle without anyone on the beach or among the swimmers noticing it. Suddenly, the great white attacked. The attack happened quickly and violently. The shark rose to the surface in a split second, snagging Marty's legs with its strong jaws. Due to the force of the impact, her friends initially experienced a panic attack, as they were unable to understand what was happening. Marty screamed, but the shark pulled her under before she could finish. Blood quickly stained the once clear water crimson. The shark's overwhelming strength and speed prevented Clive, closest to Marty, from immediately swimming toward her. Marty was drawn further into the water as it thrashed violently. Her companions were unable to contain their terror, as their cries of panic echoed toward the shore, alerting other beachgoers to the life-threatening situation. The shark persisted in its attack despite Marty's weight ripping through flesh and bone frighteningly. As blood rose to the surface, it blended with the frothy waves. It was a chaotic scene with people shouting, some running for help and others standing there in shock. Just then, a lifeguard on duty in a nearby tower let out a whistle, started wildly waving his arms and ordered boats to be sent out. However, it was too late already. Her friends were too terrified to move as Marty's body was hauled farther out into the bay. Despite his best efforts to swim closer, Clive realized there was nothing he could do when he saw the shark's size and the intensity of the attack. Now the water had turned a dark, unnerving red, making for a gory spectacle. Once its innate hunger was satiated, the shark let go of the remnants of Marty's body. Her body, which had once been vibrant, was now a lifeless form floating in the water. With only the scars from its vicious attack on display, the shark vanished back into the depths. In minutes, rescue vessels reached the scene, but their only accomplishment was salvaging Marty's remnants. The lifeguards hauled her friends, still in shock, pale and shaky, out of the water. On the beach, the atmosphere drastically changed. What had begun as a day of leisure and fun quickly became an unforgettable nightmare for all of them. For days, narratives of the attack dominated Cape Town and surrounding local news. The incident in False Bay spurred discussions concerning swimmers' rights and shark safety. Marine biologists were called to examine the sharks' behavior. Still, their findings were always the same. Although sharks are not ruthless killers, in this instance, the shark mistook Marty for prey because of her size and movement. Although it was a tragic accident, it highlighted the dangers of swimming in areas where predators are known to frequent. The attack had a significant impact on Marty's friends, particularly Clive. In the wake, they battled grief and guilt and wondered if there was anything they could have done to keep her alive. In actuality, though, they had been defenseless against such a formidable predator. The beach, which had previously brought them happiness, now served as a sad reminder of nature's terrifying unpredictability and life's frailty. Eventually, the beach was reopened, and life in False Bay returned to normal, at least on the surface. However, the image of Marty's last moments would live on in the minds of those who saw the attack, serving as a terrifying reminder of the perils that lie beneath the surface. A group of friends were relaxing on the quiet beaches of Koh Samui, Thailand, in the summer of 1999. Koh Samui is a well-liked vacation spot because of its immaculate beaches and glistening waters. Travelers seeking refuge from the stresses of daily life have long found sanctuary on this small island in the Gulf of Thailand. Its breathtaking coastline, peppered with opulent resorts and coconut groves, creates an idyllic scene. However, few visitors knew the deadly, silent box jellyfish lurking beneath the turquoise waters. Ethan Marlowe, a 26-year-old thrill-seeker passionate about the sea, was among the vacationers. He had traveled to Thailand with two of his closest friends, Malcolm Piers and Clara Vaughan, in search of an extraordinary adventure. The trio spent their days marveling at the island's natural beauty, savoring the local cuisine, and exploring every corner of their tropical paradise. The group decided to go for a cool evening swim as the sun set, creating a warm orange hue over the horizon to cap their day in style. Only a few locals and tourists were strewn about the beach they had selected, which was comparatively quiet. The water was ideal for a calm dip because it was warm, inviting, and serene. Never the kind to back down from a challenge, Ethan ran toward the ocean and dove into the shallow waters laughing. Unaware of the impending invisible threat, Malcolm and Clara trailed closely behind, playing and splashing in the waves. One of the most poisonous animals on the planet, the deadly box jellyfish, was known to reside in the waters off Thailand's beaches, especially in the summer. Mastering stealth, the box jellyfish slid through the water undetected by its eventual victims thanks to its nearly invisible transparent body. The local authorities had put up warnings and signs about the dangers of these creatures in recent years, but tourists who were unaware of the hidden dangers in the ocean frequently disregarded them. Something scraped against Ethan's leg as he swam further out to sea. When it passed him at first, he thought it was just a piece of seaweed drifting by. But a sharp pain suddenly shot through his body. His leg was encircled by the tentacles of a box jellyfish, which injected a strong venom into his circulation. It was the worst pain Ethan had ever felt. After it had finished its attack, probably sensing that it was perhaps a threat to it, the jellyfish continued its movements as if nothing had happened. The venom started to spread throughout his body and attack his nervous system, causing his muscles to seize and his vision to become blurry. Ethan was distressed, but Clara and Malcolm were too busy splashing in the shallows to notice immediately. They didn't realize something was seriously wrong until they heard a choked gasp and observed him fighting to stay afloat. Malcolm, the more experienced swimmer between the two, lunged in Ethan's direction, assuming he was having a cramp or was caught in a riptide. However, upon approaching Ethan, he noticed the red, angry welts that appeared to burn through his skin. Malcolm took hold of Ethan's arm and started dragging him toward the coast, which caused panic. With a growing alarm, Clara screamed for assistance and ran to the beach. Though some visitors and local fishermen hurried to their aid, little could be done. The closest hospital was miles away, and box jellyfish stings were notoriously fatal if not treated immediately. The venom had started to shut down Ethan's body by the time Malcolm dragged him onto the sand. Ethan's pulse rate was unstable and his breathing was shallow. The characteristic scars left by the jellyfish tentacles were all over his pale, clammy skin. His body trembled as the poison assaulted his organs, almost paralyzing him from the pain. Watching in horror as Ethan's condition worsened was the small group of people gathered around the group. Unable to find any vinegar on hand, a local fisherman who was aware of the risks posed by box jellyfish made a desperate attempt to explain that it could neutralize the venom on the skin. Time was running out, and Ethan's chances of surviving were slimmer by the second. Clara crouched next to her friend, holding his hand and shedding tears as she watched her friend go. Everyone was left with no choice but to wait for the inevitable. As Ethan's body continued to shut down, minutes seemed like hours. His breathing also became slower and his heartbeat grew weaker until it eventually stopped. The group of friends faced the reality of what had transpired, and the once calm beach, now void of laughter and joy, became silent. They had experienced tragedy during a vacation that was supposed to strengthen their bond. Although the cause of death was clear, the local authorities opened an investigation in the days that followed. Despite its diminutive size, the box jellyfish was a notorious killer in the area. Despite the warnings and signs that were put up, it was too late for Ethan Marlowe. His passing was a harsh reminder of the perils that can be found beneath even the most picturesque locations. Malcolm and Clara carried a heavy load back home after losing their friend, which devastated them. It reminded them how quickly life could be taken away, haunting them for years that night. They had lost the ability to be in awe of the ocean forever. They now saw the sea as a dangerous place where even the tiniest creatures could have lethal power, a place of terror and uncertainty. Though tourists kept coming to Thailand's beaches, there was a newfound sense of caution among those aware of Ethan Marlowe's story. Though lovely and inviting, the ocean can also be dangerous and erratic. Moreover, invisible threats have been the deadliest in some instances. 1986 was the year in Aldabra, a small coral atoll in the Indian Ocean known as a haven for lovers of marine life located off the coast of the Seychelles National Park. Renowned for its varied marine species and immaculate coral reefs, the atoll was named a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Scientists, photographers, and divers worldwide have studied its ecosystems. Despite being more than 1,000 kilometers away from Mahi, the main island, Aldabra has not experienced a surge in tourists. The atoll's surrounding waters were pristine with meters of visibility, but the currents were erratic, frequently powerful and hazardous. Legends about a massive stingray that patrolled the deeper reefs of Aldabra have been circulated among the local fishermen and divers for years. Known as Tarik, the stingray was reportedly enigmatic and aggressive when startled. Still, this was the first time anyone had ever taken a close-up picture of it. It had been over 10 years since the last confirmed sighting, and the diving community continued to speculate about its continued existence. The objective of Joaquim Quim Salazar, an accomplished and driven underwater photographer upon his arrival in Aldabra, was to film the elusive giant stingray. Due to her years of experience photographing marine life in dangerous settings, Quim was no stranger to risky dives. His portfolio included photographs of moray eels, poisonous lionfish, and sharks. However, Tariq, the stingray, had grown to be his obsession. His career would reach new heights if he could take pictures of such a creature. Quim had put together a small group of people to help him on this journey. Marta Karimi was his dive buddy and a marine biologist with years of experience diving in the Pacific and Indian Oceans. Beside them sat Radzi, a quiet but observant diver who had grown up hearing tales of the enigmatic stingray, a local Seychellois guide. He guided them through the dangerous currents and helped with any technical issues. Early in the morning, as the sun rose above the horizon, the team set out their boat, slicing through the calm waters. The strategy was straightforward: descend to about 40 meters below the surface where the enormous stingray was said to have been seen in the past, and wait. They would have more than an hour to use up their oxygen, which would have given Quim plenty of time to set up his shots. Team members got into their suits as the boat anchored above a deep trench close to the reef's edge. Although the surface was calm and the water was warm, there was a noticeable tension in the air. With unwavering concentration, Quim double-checked the settings on his submerged camera. As always, Marta cautioned everyone about the risks involved in approaching stingrays, particularly ones that were reportedly larger than Tariq. When he was ready, Razi gave a subdued nod, and the three stepped down into the chasm. At 30 meters, the coral formations were brimming with life. In the distance, tiny sharks glided idly while schools of vivid fish darted between the coral heads. But the water got deeper and darker beneath the reef's allure. The three reached the agreed-upon depth of 40 meters and stood close to a ledge that overlooked a drop-off into the abyss. They kept waiting. Nothing occurred for nearly 20 minutes. Getting impatient, Quim motioned for Marta and Razi to come along as he approached the edge of the drop-off. The vast, ominous water beneath appeared to entice. Suddenly, Quim noticed movement in a shadow against the deep blue background out of the corner of his eye. Beyond any stingray he had ever seen, it was gigantic. With its wingspan of more than 3 meters, the stingray seemed to materialize out of thin air. It was Tariq. Its movements were deliberate and slow, yet predatory. As he moved closer and adjusted his camera to get the once-in-a-lifetime shot, Quim's heart raced. Not wanting to frighten the creature, he gestured for Marta and Razi to return. His gaze fixed on the stingray, hovering close to the coral, and he didn't seem bothered by the divers as he drifted a few meters away. However, everything changed in an instant after that. The stingray abruptly turned its tail, slicing through the water like a blade. The poisonous barb at the end of the tail hit Quim square in the chest, hardly giving him time to react. The agony struck instantly and was unbearable. The moment the venom started to flow through Quim's veins, his body erupted. He lost hold of his camera, and it vanished into the shadows. Marta and Razi watched in horror as everything happened. Marta lunged ahead, attempting to get close to Quim, but the stingray quickly moved away, taking Quim's lifeless body with it. Razi moved fast, swimming to catch up with them, but Quim was drawn further into the water by the stingray's strength. The venom paralyzed Quim's limbs, leaving his body defenseless as he was pulled deeper and deeper into the chasm. He was breathing heavily, and as the stingray dragged him down to a depth of more than 50 meters, he could feel the icy, oppressive pressure of the deep. His vision became blurry as the light from above grew dimmer. Marta and Razi desperately struggled to keep up. They were nearing the limits of their oxygen supply, and the depth became dangerous. Razi reached out, managing to grab hold of Quim's arm, but the stingray, sensing the resistance, lashed out again. Its barb sliced through the water, narrowly missing Razi's face. Marta signaled frantically to Razi that they had to ascend. They were out of time. With a final sorrowful look at Quim's motionless body being dragged further into the depths, they were forced to retreat. Marta and Razi surfaced, gasping for air, their minds reeling from the horror of what had just transpired. The boat captain, seeing the panic on their faces, helped them aboard. But it was quickly clear that Quim was gone. There would be no rescue. They had been too deep, too far out, and the stingray too powerful. In the days that followed, a search was conducted, but no trace of Quim's body was ever found. The authorities ruled it a tragic accident, another reminder of the dangers that lurk beneath the ocean's surface. Marta and Razi returned to their lives, forever haunted by the events of that day. Tariq, the giant stingray, remained a mystery. Some believed it had acted out of self-defense, others that it was following its instincts. Yet in the waters around Aldabra, the legend of the giant stingray only grew, its reputation cemented as the creature that had dragged a man to his death in the depths of the Indian Ocean. In the summer of 2009, a team of marine biologists set up camp on the rocky shores of Espanola Island, one of the easternmost islands in the Galapagos archipelago. The volcanic landscape stretched out before them, interrupted only by the turquoise waters of the Pacific that lapped at its edges. This island has long been a center for research on marine life, particularly the sea lions that play along its coasts. The region is ideal for research because Galapagos sea lions, Zalaphus wallabeki, are known for their curiosity and frequent human interactions. The local fishermen had told the biologists tales of hostile bull sea lions during mating season, but the scientists, believing they knew better, had discounted them. Dr. Lysander Grieve, a seasoned biologist with almost 2 decades of experience studying marine mammals, oversaw the research team. He was accompanied by his junior associates Kaito Nakamura, a meticulous Japanese diver and sabakwa expert, and Dr. Anka Moreau, a French marine ecologist with a sharp sense of humor and a passion for exploration. Tarek Almasi, a Hungarian-born marine engineer in charge of maintaining the team's diving gear, was the group's 4th member. Though the group had come to observe the sea lion's playful antics, what they found below the water's surface was far from the picturesque scenes they had anticipated. As usual, the dive got underway. A short distance off the coast, the team anchored their small research boat and prepared for an afternoon swim with the sea lions. The high sun gave the water a golden glow. As Kaito distributed the air tanks and dive masks, he ensured everything was in working order. During the team briefing, Dr. Grieve reminded them of the sea lion's territorial nature, particularly that of the bulls who fiercely guarded their harems during the breeding season. However, the group felt assured, possibly a little too at ease. One by one, they dove into the shallow reef that runs along the island's edge. The world was vibrant below the surface. As sea turtles slid by idly, schools of fish darted between the protruding coral. As promised, the sea lions immediately materialized, skipping playfully through the water. With their acrobatic twists and turns, the younger sea lions swam in circles around the group. Anka pointed excitedly at a particularly daring sea lion that brushed past her, laughing through her snorkel. For the first 30 minutes, the dive proceeded as planned. The sea lion's playful antics captivated the team, who eagerly took notes and recorded video footage. However, something changed as they approached a rocky ledge home to a sizable colony of sea lions. A huge bull sea lion surfaced from the darker depths. There was no denying its presence. Its body moved with a purposeful and menacing grace easily 3 times that of the juveniles. With its rigid posture and dark, calculating eyes fixed on the divers, the bull was clearly warning them. Dr. Grieve warned the group to maintain their distance after spotting the bull first. This kind of territorial aggression was nothing new to him. But the bull made its move as the team started to gradually back off. The animal shot forward with extraordinary speed, its strong body slicing through the water like a torpedo. The bull aimed for Kaito because he had been the closest to the outcrop. The sea lion's forceful blow to his side knocked Kaito off balance before anyone could react. The impact force caused vibrations through the water. The bull persisted despite Kaito's best efforts to regain control. With its razor-sharp teeth severing through the wetsuit and into flesh, it turned around and bit Kaito's arm. When blood hazed the surroundings, Kaito's muffled scream resounded through the water. As the group observed the scene, fear took hold of them. Though the bull was not done, Anka swam in Kaito's direction. It forcefully shook Kaito as it seized him by the leg once more. During the altercation, Kaito's air hose was punctured, and the regulator in his mouth came loose. Kaito was losing blood quickly, and his oxygen supply was being compromised as bubbles emerged from the damaged apparatus, adding to his panic. Dr. Grieve moved swiftly to call for assistance from Tarek and Anka. Kaito had to be pulled out of the water, but the sea lion did not back down from its assault. Being the best swimmer, Tarek put himself in the way of Kaito and the bull, jabbing at it with his dive knife to ward it off. The bull growled and bared its teeth, but Tarek's combative stance eventually made it back off. It peered at them icily briefly as it lingered on the edge of perception. Now that the bull was confined, Tarek and Anka took Kaito and started swimming toward the boat's safety. Before going after them, Dr. Grieve waited a few anxious moments, watching the water for any indication of the bull. In addition to being pale from pain, Kaito's breathing was labored. He was bleeding heavily from his arm and leg, and his air tank was short on time due to the damaged regulator. Finally, the bull charged toward the boat. Tarek, though, was prepared this time. He jabbed his knife into the water between them and the bull with an intense thrust. The animal gave one last menacing growl that echoed through the water before veering off and eventually withdrawing into the depths. When they pulled Kaito onto the boat, Anka gave him first aid. Luckily, the injuries on his arm and leg were not life-threatening, even though his wetsuit was torn apart. As soon as they arrived at the closest island base, Kaito would require medical attention. so they immediately radioed for help. The boat raced back toward the coast, and the atmosphere was tense. The team arrived in Hispaniola to study the playful side of sea lions, but what they found there was much more dangerous. Reliving the events in his mind, Dr. Grieve sat silently and ran a hand through his graying hair. The intensity of the attack caught everyone off guard, even though he was aware that the bull had been defending its domain. While Kaito healed from his wounds in the following weeks, the experience had left him terrified to dive into sea lion territory. The group finished their investigation, but that day's incident continued to trouble them. The breathtakingly beautiful and amazing Galapagos Islands had unveiled a darker, more primitive side, and originally viewed as amusing friends. The sea lion served as a constant reminder of the erratic perils that could be found beneath the surface. The year was 1989, deep within the thick, humid Congo basin. The jungle's sound was constant, with birds squawking, insects buzzing, and the general hum of the forest. The Congo River cut through dense vegetation, a meandering lifeline whose murky waters concealed deadly and ancient secrets. The local tribes whispered of a creature that had terrorized them for generations, but outsiders seldom ventured into this area. They dubbed it the Beast, a monstrously large Nile crocodile with a terrifying and bloody reputation. Unaware that this section of the river could be extremely hazardous, a group of foreign canoeists ventured into this wild and uncontrolled wilderness. The group consisted of 4 adventurers: Evelyn Locke, a British wildlife researcher who was passionate about documenting the unknown; Victor Ruiz, a quiet but determined Spanish photographer; Jonah Tane, a thrill-seeker from New Zealand; and Tariq Abbasi, an Egyptian geologist who was fascinated by studying the deep gorges and cliffs that lined the river. The group was led by a man named Kofi. Over the previous few days, they had been canoeing the Congo River and marveling at the tall trees, colorful wildlife, and loud jungle sounds. They had been cheerful despite Kofi's sporadic warnings about the risks associated with the river. They were filled with the exhilaration of adventure and a sense of invincibility, as if the river had embraced them. However, the river is a fickle friend, and a nightmare hides beneath its surface. The group paddled slowly through a narrow channel as the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting an orange glow across the water. The air was thick with humidity, and an eerie silence had descended upon the jungle. The birds had stopped calling, and the insects seemed quiet. It was as if the jungle itself was holding its breath. Kofi, who had been paddling at the front of the lead canoe, suddenly stopped. His eyes scanned the water, and his face was tense. In the second canoe, Jonah noticed the change in the guide's demeanor and called out to the others. Kofi muttered under his breath that something was in the water, though none of the others heard him. Without warning, the water beside them exploded. A massive burst of spray shot into the air, and before anyone could react, a canoe was violently overturned. Jonah was thrown into the water, his paddle flying from his hands as he flailed, trying to right himself. The others barely had time to register what was happening when a monstrous crocodile, its scales the color of the muddy river, lunged from the water with terrifying speed. It was the Beast. The crocodile, easily over 20 feet long, clamped its massive jaws around Jonah's torso. His scream was cut short as the animal dragged him under the water in one swift, violent motion. For a moment, his companions were left in stunned silence, fixating on the location where Jonah had vanished. The predator twisted and rolled beneath the surface, its strong jaws crushing Jonah's bones as the water churned and thrashed, turning red. Fumbling for his camera, Victor drops it into the water while frozen in his canoe. The enormity of the circumstance strikes him like a ton of bricks. There was no local legend or inflated story about the man-eating crocodile. It was genuine and possessed a unique identity. Trembling with terror, Evelyn cries out for Kofi to intervene. Even though Kofi has much experience, he knows they are powerless. The beast was too swift and too strong. Any attempt to fight would only result in more of them being killed, and their paddles were useless against its armored hide. Tariq continued to try to devise a plan despite his pale face and racing thoughts. Grabbing his paddle and attempting to maneuver his canoe closer to where Jonah had been taken, he yelled that they had to get Jonah. However, as he advanced, the crocodile reappeared, its eyes sparkling in the last light. Now that it was playing with them, it let them know it remained present and hungry. Now the group had to make an impossible decision. They had two options. Either they would run and leave Jonah to face his fate, or they would try to save him even though they knew it was probably too late. Paddling toward the thrashing water, Tarek and Victor desperately try to save Jonah's life, but they do not give up hope. But as they approached, the crocodile lunged again, aiming for Tarek's canoe. It slammed into the side with a colossal splash, nearly capsizing it. Tarek barely kept his balance as the canoe rocked violently, water sloshing inside. Hoping the guide had a trick to eject the creature, Evelyn screamed to Kofi. However, Kofi looked pale. He knew that once the beast set its sights on its prey, there would be no turning back. With a scared voice, Kofi yelled at them to paddle back. In an attempt to put some distance between them and the crocodile, he paddled wildly. Victor paddled away from the attack site, still in shock, following Kofi's lead. Evelyn struggled to steady her canoe, despite shaking uncontrollably, and having sweat and fear on her hands. The crocodile reappeared as they were pulling back, taking Jonah's shattered body with it and dragging it permanently beneath the water. After the attack, the river became motionless again, with the blood slowly vanishing into the depths and creating ripples. With just 3 members left, the group paddled on, their silence thick with the weight of what had just transpired. They remained silent for hours until they arrived at a safer river area far from the beast's hunting grounds. When they eventually returned, the people in the closest village who had heard their story nodded solemnly. They had been forewarned. They had apprised them of the beast. The survivors would always remember those terrifying moments on the river, even though Jonah Tain's name would now be added to the long list of casualties claimed by the crocodile. Evelyn never returned to the Congo, though she would write about her experiences there years later. The memory of Jonah's passing tormented Victor for the rest of his life, leading him to give up wildlife photography permanently. Despite not being physically hurt, Tarek could not shake the sense of powerlessness that had overtaken him at that precise moment. He abandoned his studies in geology and returned to Egypt, choosing the safety of rock and sand over the dangerous waters of the jungle. Regarding the beast, its legend grew with every new attack as it lurked in the rivers of the Congo, waiting for its next victim. The turquoise waters off the Florida Keys shimmered under the unrelenting sun on a scorching August 2011. The oceanic stretch close to Islamorada was well known for its colorful coral reefs and abundant marine life. Both residents and visitors frequently descended upon this Keys area, excited to explore the undersea splendor. The region, which was once a haven for pirates in the 18th century, is now popular with divers and snorkelers who want to experience the peace of the ocean and the excitement of up-close encounters with beautiful fish. Seasoned guide Cyrus Trenton led the way, taking 6 snorkelers out for a midday adventure on this specific day. Travelers from around the nation made up the group and were excited to see the underwater spectacle the Florida Keys had to offer. Among them were a couple from Minnesota, Hayden and Lila Sorensen, a college student from Georgia, Alistair McNeil, and a retired marine engineer, Waverly Finch, who had been coming to the Keys for years. The last group member was Miriam DeVour, a travel writer who had been documenting her adventures for a magazine feature. Cyrus, who had been diving and snorkeling these waters for over a decade, assured his group that this spot known as Molasses Reef was one of the safest and most beautiful places to snorkel. The visibility was ideal. The coral reefs were teeming with life and the water was shallow. Each group member wore fins, a mask, and a snorkel. Some wore gaudy metal jewelry like rings and watches. Though they were unaware that one of them had drawn the attention of a deadly predator hiding in the depths, the sunlight glinted off their equipment as they slipped into the warm water. Many aquatic species, including graceful stingrays and vibrant parrotfish, could be found at Molasses Reef. In addition, experienced residents were aware of the presence of barracudas, which are large, sleek, and infamously hostile fish that can reach lengths of more than 6 feet. Barracudas were generally shy fish that were happy to observe from a distance. But occasionally, if they were startled or provoked, they could turn hostile. A particularly large barracuda spotted in the area for a few weeks was also about to appear. Hayden Sorensen, who had never snorkeled before, was amazed by the rush of fish that darted in and out of the reef as the group drifted above the coral. He was blissfully unaware that something far more sinister was taking notice of the reflective surface of his stainless steel dive watch. Hayden had no idea that the glint on his watch resembled the scales of a smaller fish, making it an attractive meal for a barracuda on the prowl. At that moment, the barracuda emerged from the reef's shadows. It moved at an incredible speed, measuring nearly 6 feet in length. Its body was shaped like a torpedo with razor-sharp teeth. It initially kept a safe distance from the group, circling Hayden's shimmering wrist the whole time. Cyrus realized something was wrong when he saw the barracuda approaching while observing the water from a few feet away. Although he had previously seen barracudas, this one was unique. It was excessively close, intense, and forceful. The barracuda attacked before Cyrus could give the order to withdraw. It moved like lightning, snatching Hayden's leg with its strong jaws clamped down just below the knee. Hayden felt a searing pain shoot up his leg, but the attack happened so quickly that he didn't even realize what was happening. The once clear water turned murky with dark red as blood spurted from the wound. Panic erupted among the group. They froze momentarily, then began thrashing around in the water, frantically attempting to escape the injured Hayden. Cyrus rushed toward Hayden, grabbing his arm and pulling him toward the boat anchored several yards away. But the barracuda still needed to be finished. With blood in the water, it circled back, its predatory instincts fully awakened. Cyrus knew they had only seconds before the fish attacked again. Waverly Finch, a retired marine engineer, had kept a level head during the initial attack. Years of experience on the water had taught him that panic was often more dangerous than the threat itself. He motioned for the others to form a tight group and swim toward the boat as fast as possible. But the barracuda was relentless. It darted back toward the group, aiming for Hayden's other leg this time. Alistair McNeil kicked at the predator in a desperate attempt to stop it from attacking. The barracuda dodged away, but circled its icy black eyes, observing everything they did. Cyrus knew they wouldn't have much time before things got worse as long as Hayden's wound continued to leak blood. When they arrived at the boat, Waverly and Cyrus assisted them in pulling Hayden out of the water. His leg was a mess torn open by the barracuda's teeth. Lila was in shock, but Miriam, the travel writer, quickly grabbed a towel from the boat and applied pressure to Hayden's wound, trying to stem the bleeding. As the group scrambled to get everyone back on board, the barracuda made one last pass beneath the boat to remind them that this was its territory. Cyrus fired up the engine and they sped back toward shore, leaving the predator behind in the depths. When they reached land, Hayden was immediately rushed to a nearby clinic where doctors stitched up the deep gashes in his leg. He would recover, but the scars would remain both physically and emotionally. The experience shook the rest of the group. When they traveled to the Florida Keys, they had anticipated a serene, breathtaking encounter with nature. Instead, they encountered unadulterated, capricious peril beneath the ocean's surface. Even with his wealth of experience, Cyrus had never witnessed a barracuda act aggressively, and he cautioned snorkeling groups to be wary of shiny objects in the water in the future. The snorkelers discovered that day that although the Florida Keys had long been a breathtaking and amazing location, predators could strike at any time.